Welcome to the Focus and Chill podcast, where we discuss productivity tactics that work for neurodivergent individuals.
Every episode, we interview guests with lived experience of neurodiversity who also have a solid productivity and habit game, and pass the learnings on to you, our wise and benevolent audience.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Joey.
I'm Joey, and I coach creatives to get moving on their most ambitious projects through the power of solid habits and strong focus. I'm also a perpetual student of psychology and perpetually on a quest to a one-armed chin-up.
And I'm Jeremy, a neurospicy software developer turned startup founder, building the Focus Bear app to help people with ADHD and autism thrive at work. My cool party trick is leaving parties early so I can get to sleep in time for my 2-hour-long morning routine. The Focus and Chill podcast is brought to you by Focus Bear, a habit and productivity app that makes healthy habits and deep work the path of least resistance. If you have a tendency to check emails or scroll through Instagram first thing in the morning, but long to develop a meditation and exercise habit first thing, Focus Bear can help you. The app blocks distractions on all your devices and guides you through your habits one at a time. Throughout the day, Focus Bear assists you to stay in deep work by blocking websites and apps that are unrelated to your chosen focus mode. Life's not all about work though. You'll be prompted to take regular breaks to rest your eyes and stretch your muscles. At the end of the day, Focus Bear helps you switch off. Work-related apps get hidden so you can unwind and sleep well. Check out the app by going to focusbear.io. Welcome to episode number 54 of the Focus and Chill podcast. I'm thrilled to be joined by Shea Belsky today. Shea is an autistic self-advocate. He is the Chief Technology Officer of Mentra, a hiring platform for neurodivergent job seekers. Shea brings several unique perspectives to supporting neurodivergent colleagues. He has been the manager of neurodivergent and neurotypical employees, has reported to neurodivergent and neurotypical managers, and has advocated for the needs and well-being of his peers. Shea is excited to share these experiences with others to create a more neuro-inclusive workplace for everyone. Welcome to the show, Shea.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy. I'm super psyched to be here to chat a little bit about neurodiversity, about autism, myself, and really just keep things candid and open and light.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's start with yourself then. Can you tell us about your own journey with neurodiversity?
Sure. Something that I think it's important for me to acknowledge is that I was diagnosed at a pretty young age, at around 2 or 3 years old. And I recognize that for a lot of people, diagnosis at that point may not have been an option. People just didn't have it identified at that point in time. But I did have a diagnosis when I was pretty young, and I had support services pretty much all throughout my time in school. In the United States, we have an IEP. So I had an IEP from elementary school, middle school, high school, providing me with a lot of support services, including speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, every kind of ist under the sun. But I did have an official diagnosis, and because of that, I got a whole lot of support of that through school. When I went to university, I went to Cornell University. I worked a lot with disability services there to help me get accommodations and other support that I needed there. Some of that included extended time on tests. Some of it included some more specialized relationships with folks who worked for disability services at Cornell, and just a greater sense of support and structure that otherwise I wouldn't have had at Cornell. As daunting of a place as it is, with tens of thousands of people, it would have been overwhelming without a little bit of support from them.
Yeah.
And through all of that, my journey about neurodiversity and me being autistic is just kind of discovering what are the areas in which I can actually make progress in, or what I would consider to be evolve in or improve in order to change how I was acting, how I was behaving in ways that I felt that I could. Not because people were pressuring me to, but because I felt that I wanted to. Like one of those things being talking fast. If you've known me a few years ago, I talk at the speed of light, and I still do that from time to time. I worked really hard to be aware of that and try to become more articulate. I still slip up from time to time, but at Cornell was really where I'm like, okay, I know that I want to be more articulate, so let's just work on that and find the way that works. And at Cornell, that meant I became a teaching assistant, because as TAs, they would, first off, you can get paid as a TA. Great. I enjoyed getting paid. But then also they had a lot of enrichment programs, support services, and other sorts of incubation programs to help TAs level up in their own skills, become better educators, become better instructors, better communicators. So like, this is great. I can get paid and I can develop these skills that I'm trying to get better at. And it doesn't look as weird as it is because there's like 20 or 30 other people in the room at the same time. So it really worked out well for me in that regard. But I still had to put myself out there and be afraid and really just kind of be on my own in that department because no one was going to do it for me. I had to put myself out there, and it ultimately worked.
Yeah, it's great that you had all that support all the way from 2 to 3 years of age, all through university as well. How did you find it when you were younger? Because there might be, I guess, other kids noticing the difference and pointing that out to you. Or did you just feel like everyone treated you pretty well?
It was definitely a mixed bag. There were some people who were bullies, not gonna lie, people who absolutely made me feel alienated and other because of my being neurodivergent for reasons that I didn't know at the time. They just saw an easy target in me to pick on me and be pretty mean. Most people kind of didn't leave me alone, but they didn't necessarily like ostracize me to the extent of bullying. They just kind of gave me space, I would say is the right word. And then I did have a group of friends who didn't really care either way. They just wanted someone to play video games with or play card games or something else with. And I definitely had a group of friends, elementary school, middle school, high school, but there was a group of people who I felt could have been nicer. As time went on, I think those folks also matured and got to the point where they're like, wow, I was pretty mean to Shea back in the day. And they laid off pretty dramatically. There was a straggler or two, but for the most part, as they grew up, they laid off on the bullying pretty dramatically.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I had a similar experience that the early years of high school were not fun. I think not a lot of self-awareness on many people's part, including my own.
Yeah. And like, I've gotten to the point now where if people are going to give me a hard time about my neurodiversity, I'm fortunate enough to have the confidence just kind of like shove it back in people's faces and be like, okay, well, why are you picking on me? Like, is something wrong with you? Like, I kind of assume that if someone feels the need to pick a bone with me because of my neurodiversity and not something else, that something is wrong with them and not with me. And like, do you have something else that you were doing with your time about just picking on people who don't have anything else going on? I think some people just like get off on that, and that's the sort of thing that bothers me, especially like adults and people who are mature and should know better and just choose to be very immature and very childish.
Yeah, wow. So that's happened relatively recently?
Recently, no, to be honest with you. It's happened often enough in the past that I mentioned it. It hasn't happened to me recently, and that's largely because I got married recently and I've moved halfway across the country, so I haven't really had time to sit still and have it happen to me.
Yeah.
But it has happened to me like within the last year, I would say. But not within the last 2 months or so, only because I've been running around, hopping on planes and cars and just traveling so much that I haven't stood still long enough for it to happen to me. But within the last year, people have said weird comments to me that come from a place of obliviousness and perhaps insensitivity.
Yeah, I get you. So it might not be intentional, but just say things which come across the wrong way. I think I've had the same thing happen where I had someone suggest to me that because I've got an ADHD and autism diagnosis, that I must be on welfare and be unemployed.
There's a difference between people who make assumptions about you based on neurodiversity versus people who are intentionally mean. I think a lot of people say things that aren't meant to be mean that come off as mean.
Yeah.
And obviously, saying a mean thing is saying a mean thing. I do think that the intention behind it has a lot of meaning in that regard, has a lot of purpose.
Yeah.
If someone says to me, you don't look autistic, typically they don't mean it in a bad way. It's meant as an observation, as a comment, but not as a dig, not as an insult. I take that around and I don't assume they're being mean. I turn them around and say, well, what does autism look like? We have a conversation about it. And that typically diffuses any sort of stress or anger I would otherwise feel.
Yeah, right.
Now, if someone doubles down on that and insists I can't be autistic because I'm articulate and get eye contact, then that's a different story.
Yeah.
For the most part, people who refute my neurodiversity or give me a hard time about it do not come from a place of hostility. It's often a case of obliviousness, or they don't have the breadth of neurodiversity in their life to understand that neurodiversity has lots of different appearances and looks, and it
Yeah.
is not solely defined by whoever it is in their lives that they know. Because someone in their life, the only autistic person they know might be nonverbal. They might stim a lot. They might be really antisocial, or they might be really brilliant, really passionate, really happy, very intelligent. There's lots of different ways in which neurodiversity can appear to somebody else. And where the problem I found comes in most frequently is in when I come up to somebody and say I'm autistic, and they immediately think of that other person they know who's autistic, and they assume that we're the same. And I'm like, no, we're not exactly the same. And that just starts a conversation most of the time, and most of the time people get it, but sometimes people don't, and that's where things get a little bit tense.
Yeah, I hear you. That assumption that the spectrum is only one part of it doesn't seem very accurate. What would you do if it does become tense? Do you just detach at that point, or do you try and educate them?
It depends on how far I'm willing to go and how much I can actually speak with them. If there's no convincing them, then it's not a good use of time. I just walk away, and I can't make up someone's mind or change their mind if they're not willing to be flexible, to learn something, and to be open to change, be open to being told that they're wrong about something. When it comes to things like neurodiversity, it's a very personal subject to people. Some people care very greatly, very kindly about people in their lives who are neurodivergent. And when you're confronted with two very different perspectives or portrayals of neurodiversity in your life, some folks, to no fault of their own, may find it hard to reconcile two images of neurodiversity which have the same label, two autistic people who both have a diagnosis or identification of autism, but behave and act very differently. For some people, they could find that a really hard thing in their head to picture for one reason or another. And if someone can't reconcile that difference, there's not a lot that I can do for them other than just have a conversation. And if they don't want to talk, then it's only going to make things more upsetting. And I just think it's best to disconnect and walk away at that point.
Yeah, makes sense. On that topic of different understandings of neurodivergence, I think that feeds in pretty well with the work you're doing at Mentra. Do you want to tell the audience about what Mentra is about and how it's helping people?
Absolutely. Mentra is building a hiring platform for neurodivergent job seekers. And again, that's people with autism, ADHD, dyslexia. And we really work with folks in the United States for right now, working with software, data, and design jobs. Our goal is really to try to hit it out of the park with that set of job categories in a couple different cities in the US, with the hope that in the future we can launch it worldwide, any job on our platform. But what we really found is that we want to hit it out of the park with a couple smaller, tightly focused areas for a moment in order to really deliver on our promise to deliver meaningful, supportive job opportunities to our job seekers. And the best way for us to do it is to really get into the weeds of an individual job seeker and ask them, okay, work history, education, that's fine, but what are some accommodations you might need in the workplace? What are some areas in which you think you really exceed in as a neurodivergent person? What are some things that you need help or have an opportunity area in? How do you see your neurodiversity coming up in the workplace? And really just enabling a neurodivergent job seeker to advocate for themselves and to clearly communicate to an employer, this is me, who I am as a neurodivergent job seeker, and this is what I need to be my most successful and my most productive and my happiest. At the other side of that equation, we work directly with employers to help them advocate themselves to job seekers, because ultimately job seekers are like, why should I want to work for you? What's the point? Because they can post all the jobs on the platform all they want, but if a company isn't being supportive or doesn't have the support structure, doesn't have managers who understand neurodiversity, doesn't have a supportive culture where people feel like they can unmask and be themselves, then it doesn't really matter. So with our employers, we work with them to help them advocate, to create a profile for them to say, okay, this is why you should want to work for this company, for this employer. and really feel like they are going to be a good fit for you. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, there's no point. Otherwise, you're going to just like move on to the next thing. It won't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you vet the companies that come onto the platform?
Yes, we don't, at this point in time, companies don't just walk in, they go through a whole supportive environment, a whole process before they end up on Mentra itself.
Yeah, that seems important because there'd be a lot of companies that would give lip service to wanting to support neurodivergent job seekers, but it might not actually be congruent in terms of maybe the recruitment process is good, but after that, maybe people end up in a bad situation afterwards.
We are not about lip service, we're about actually getting stuff done.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it seems so important because the recruitment process is not a fun place. I didn't really enjoy going for jobs especially my early career. So I love that you're allowing people to point out both the accommodations that they need and also the, what was it on the website, the neuro-exceptional qualities. Really like that
Exactly.
idea.
Because ultimately people think neurodiversity as only something which is deficit based or something that's always negative. But on the flip side, neurodivergent people have so many exceptional talents, strengths, skills, superpowers, for lack of a better word, that really enable them to succeed and be incredible, meaningful people in a workplace. What's missing is employers knowing how to support them, how to engage with them, and how to provide an inclusive environment. Ultimately, what we want to be able to do is enable these job seekers, enable anybody to unmask, to be genuine, to be themselves, and not have to feel like they're putting up a front or a facade for someone else's benefit. They should be who they are and know that their employer has what they need to be successful and supportive. Otherwise, they're going to crash and burn out.
Yeah, I hear you. What type of accommodations are most typical, both during recruitment and then once they get the job?
One of the things that I hear of anecdotally most frequently could be things like if an interview is going to be in person, for example. We're seeing a lot more in interviews go back to being in person because
Okay.
people are being shoved back into the office. And a lot of these interviews for an autistic person, there could be a lot of sound, there could be a lot of light, there could be like a really stressful environment. They have those like lunch interviews where you go to a cafeteria or a coffee shop and have an interview. And that can be a really stressful situation for somebody who's autistic or has
Yeah.
an ADHD and can't focus. So one accommodation could be, okay, let's like get something to eat and then go to a quiet area. That way we can just focus. It can still be casual, it can still be relaxed, but you can hear me, I can hear you. There's no distractions. Just giving people a very focused environment where they can have a conversation, because that just happened to me last night. Like I was meeting up with a bunch of my neighbors in my new place and I could not hear any of them because it was just a very loud environment. So I said, hey, I'm having a hard time hearing people. Can we just move somewhere else where it's quieter? I didn't say anything about being autistic. I just said, I can't hear people. Can we move out? And no one had an issue with it. We just we moved to a different place and it was great. And that comes down to the employer knowing that that's something they should do. And it comes partially down to a candidate, a job seeker asking for it. As much as employers are mind readers, they're not. And there is an element of a job seeker knowing, okay, this is where I'm feeling a lot of stress. I need to know that I can ask for it. And the employer has to know that this can't be asked of them. And they should be willing to do this if asked. And they should even be proactive about sensing that and saying, okay, this candidate's having a hard time. Let's change the game, change the scenery a little bit to make this an easier time for them. Because ultimately in an interview, you want to have the most complete set of information in an interview to evaluate people fairly when you're going for a job. And an accommodation is not a cheat code. It's not an advantage. It's to put everybody on the same level. That way, everyone can be evaluated against as close to the same criteria as possible. So moving a lunch interview to a quiet room isn't an advantage. It allows the job seeker who maybe has some auditory processing disorder and has a hard time picking out sounds when there's 20,000 sounds going on,
Yeah.
this might allow them to hear you and not,
Mm,
it reduces the chances that they're going to mishear you and try to guess what you said
mm.
ultimately.
Yeah. And unless the job is as a lip reader or as someone who is working in a cafeteria, it's not a useful way to test someone's ability to put them in an
Exactly.
environment like that.
There's limited scenarios where you'd want to test someone's ability to hear in that 20,000 sound environment. And even if it was, that would still be kind of stressful for anybody.
Yeah.
If you were working in a cafeteria, working in a loud environment, maybe like the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, all the people running around, maybe that's what you're going to be doing. And at that point, I think even someone neurotypical would probably struggle with that too.
Yeah. I don't want that job.
No thanks. I'll leave that to the professionals.
Yeah. It makes me think a bit about some of those changes being universal design principles that I think in general people need to be able to hear each other during an interview. And definitely it sounds like for both of us, that's a difficult environment. I really struggle in pubs or loud environments. But I think for most people it's much better to be in a relatively quiet environment. Are you finding that employers are being willing to make those adjustments across the board, or is it still something that people have to ask for?
I think I found it's a mixture of both. I think some employers doing a better job of creating quieter spaces, sensory low areas for people who need to kind of take a breather.
Hmm.
I have also found that employers aren't getting the message, getting the memo that maybe they should be offering these things. I'd say it's moving in both directions. Some people are getting better, some companies are staying the same, and some are kind of moving in the opposite direction. So I think
Hmm.
we still have a long way to go ultimately.
Hmm. Well, it's really important work that you're doing. It was really inspiring reading the website. And I was saying before the interview that I passed it on to a friend. I'd encourage anyone listening, if you're looking for work, have a look at Mentra. Looks really good.
If you live in the US and you're looking for a software, data, or design job, sign up today, mentra.com, mentra.com.
And hopefully soon you'll be in Australia as well.
Who knows? We're blowing up pretty quickly, so never say never. I don't want to promise anything, but I definitely think that it's a possibility.
Fantastic. Let's change gears to go back to a bit more about your own life outside work. What's your sleep like? That can be a problem for many neurodivergent people. Do you sleep well, or do you ever have sleep disturbances?
I would say most of my sleep disturbance comes from my cats, I would say.
Okay.
In the middle of the night, I generally sleep pretty well. My wife and I always argue because we're on very different sleep schedules. I'll go to sleep at like 11:30 at night, and I'll wake up at like 7:30 in the morning.
Mhm.
And she'll go to sleep much later than me, like 12, 1 a.m.,
Ah.
and wake up closer to 8:30, 9:30. If it's a
Mm.
weekend, she won't wake up until 10. And I'm up at 7:30 pretty much no matter what. I think
Mm.
like, will I get out of bed at 7:30 if it's a weekend? I don't think so. But if it's like a weekday, I'm out of bed at 7:30.
Mm. Yeah, I find that difference between my wife and I's sleep schedule a little bit challenging as well. We're normally pretty close, but sometimes she'll be a little bit later than me, and I find I can't easily sleep if I still hear her rustling around outside. But it
Yeah,
sounds like you're okay.
sometimes I go to sleep at different times, and like at that point, I'll go do my own thing. She'll go do her own thing,
Mm.
and like when I come to bed or when she comes to bed, we'll typically wake the other person up. There's no real way to avoid that.
Mm.
But that's just we only really do that if one of us is super tired. Like last
Mm.
time my wife got in bed an hour before me, I came in, I woke her up as I was getting into bed, and then she went back to sleep. But
Mm.
at that point, your brain's kind of already like turned off,
Yeah.
so
Mm.
you'll go back to sleep pretty quickly.
Yeah. Do you have a wind down ritual to help your brain turn off?
Do I have a wind down ritual? I honestly really don't. Like, if my cat comes up to bed with us, I kind of just let him hang out with us. But to be honest, I kind of just close my eyes and let all the thoughts kind of empty out of my head. My wife is jealous of me. She's like, how do you do that? How do you stop thinking? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I just focus on something and then I kind of let everything else kind of wash away a little bit. I don't really have a description for it. I don't really know if that makes me rare for being able to just do that, but I find it's easy to just kind of like turn my brain off and park the car in the garage in the evening.
Yeah. How about in the lead up to bed? Do you do anything consistent there?
For me, it's typically making dinner. My wife and I alternate that front.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think that can also help a little bit with making me tired. It depends on the kind of meal that I'm cooking.
Hmm.
I'm big on making pizzas. I get the
Okay.
dough. I get the dough from the supermarket, and that's like an hour, hour and a half of work,
Mhm.
and that will put me in a good mood to go to sleep. Typically,
Nice. How about exercise? Is that something that you fit into your life?
it's pretty huge for us. My wife and I met largely because like a lot of the things that we do for fun, we like doing with each other. So we're big on running. We're gonna try to go for a hike this weekend. We're big on cycling, skiing, walking around. Those are our biggest forms of exercise, I would say. We just joined a gym with a pool recently, and my wife's into triathlon. She's trying to get me into triathlon, so maybe I'll start doing laps in the pool. Here's hoping.
Yeah.
And we kind of try to do a little bit of everything, honestly.
That sounds really fun. Even during winter as well.
Well, since we moved down to a much warmer climate, we moved from the Northeast of the United States to like the mid-Atlantic South. I was just saying before, I moved down to North Carolina, and it's so much warmer down here. Like up in the Northeast, it's like 20, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and down here it's like 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit.
All right. Even during winter.
So it's much, yeah, it's winter over here.
Yeah.
So it's much easier for us to go for a run, go for a bike. We're going to go for a hike this weekend. I haven't gone for a hike in a pretty long time. So I'm looking forward to just getting out, getting some air in my lungs, honestly. We went hiking on our honeymoon in Switzerland, and that was the last time we went for a hike.
Amazing. Lovely way to spend your honeymoon.
Oh, yeah. It was amazing.
Is it something that you've always enjoyed doing in terms of running, cycling, swimming, all of that?
Hiking I really like because when you get up to the top of that mountain and you get the amazing view, it's like, whoa, it's huge. It's a good workout too. It's another way for me to kind of like turn my brain off for a bit and just focus on the path. Just kind of like let your body do the talking. I view running in the same way. When it comes to running, I just put in my headphones, I turn up the music, I just kind of let my brain shut down and just focus on the running. I would say that running and hiking and skiing are really effective mechanisms of stress relief for me. I can just like let it all out of my system.
Yeah. Yeah. I find the
And
same.
it's just huge for me to be able to let it all go.
Yeah. Do you find, does it help with productivity and your ability to focus as well? Or is it mainly stress relief for you?
I would definitely say that it helps with focus as well. I think if I go for a run for an hour and I come back, I can kind of dive into a problem again and just kind of have a renewed look on it. I'll be like, okay, my brain's kind of powered through this physical problem. Now let's go to a cognitive problem, to a mental problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I often find I have new insights that come while I'm moving my body. Going for a run is I have to take a piece of paper with me and a pen so I can write down all the ideas I have.
I have those all the time too. I'll have an idea. I'll be like, wow, like I just had an idea about something I've been really struggling with for a few days.
Yeah, it's very counterintuitive because it seems like the right thing to do when there's a tough problem is just to spend more time on it. But actually, sometimes going out, going for a hike or a run or a swim, that can be what is required to actually move the needle.
Yes, I'm just gonna like step away from it and just be like, okay, let's look at this again and just really sink our teeth into it. And I've definitely found that it could be a helpful exercise.
Yeah. What other productivity tactics do you have?
I really enjoy, I would say, even just walking. Like going out for a walk is a similar thing to running. If you can't run, don't want to run, I don't blame you. Running is not for everybody. I'm not going to sit here and convince you, but even like if you work from home and you sit at the desk all day, get up and walk, go for like a 15, 20-minute walk. Just get some air in your body and just take a meeting walking if you can, like a walking one-on-one with someone. Go for a walk by yourself. Go get like a cup of coffee or a snack or whatever it is. I really think that walks can also have a similar effect. Just getting some sunshine out on your skin
Mm.
and just kind of getting some air down your lungs. I really
Yeah.
think that that's an effective tool too.
Mhm. Anything else that you find helpful, like the Pomodoro technique or breaking tasks down, anything like that you do?
Something I really think is effective during the workday is like blocking off sections of my calendar so people can't book time on top of them. I was telling this to one of my engineers on my team. He has a hard time context switching. And so with the context switching, I say to him, okay, put all your meetings as back to back as you can if that's what benefits him. But that's not for everybody. Some people can't do meetings back to back. It really depends on the person. For him, he likes that. So I said to him, okay, put all your meetings back to back if that works for you, and then take like 2 hours on your calendar and just put a block on your calendar so people can't schedule a meeting on top of that. And you have those 2 hours just to work.
Mm.
And then do it again for another 2 hours. You can't book off all your free time because people have to book with you at some point or another. But whenever you feel like you work best, whether it's midday, whether it's evening, morning, just put a big block on that calendar. That way people can't book on top of it.
Yeah. It must be interesting for you going from, I imagine you were an individual contributor at the beginning of your career and now you're CTO, and it's quite different in terms of the schedule that you'd have. Are you mostly in meetings now and you have less uninterrupted deep work time?
I'm definitely in more meetings than I was. As an individual contributor, I was in less meetings. I was still in a couple, but I would say much more of my time was just focused on coding. And right now, I'd say it's closer to like 50-50 in terms of meetings and people managing and coding. I'm trying to focus more on the people managing side of things than coding and leaving the engineering to the professionals, my engineers, because that's what they're good. That's where they're all excelling at.
Yeah.
So excellent at, I should say. So I'm trying to leverage more of my time and just help them do better work and more work.
How has that switch been for you, becoming a manager and spending more time looking after your team? I found that difficult personally.
It's an interesting challenge because, especially as neurodivergent people, there's not a whole lot of coaching or guidance or tutorials about how do you become a manager, can become a leader as a neurodivergent person. It's hard for anybody to become a leader, but as a neurodivergent person, someone who who struggles with social interactions, resolving conflict, delivering tough news, advocating for people, there's not really a good crash course for that as a neurodivergent person. So I've had to learn a lot on the fly, relying on other mentors. I have a career coach who I see all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I rely on a very strong support system to help myself get to where I need to be, because otherwise I'd be pretty lost.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems helpful, being able to bounce ideas off someone else, because it can be quite tricky. I found, especially the social interaction side of it, I found one-on-ones very challenging for me. Just figuring out, how do I ask about someone's personal life without being invasive in a work context? Yeah.
That is tough. I think I have to build up to that, because like when it's talking about personal things, like how's your family, how's your partner, how's your boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever, that you have to build up to that level of trust, and it doesn't come overnight. I think you have to. I think when I do that, I open up a little bit about my own life too, and that reduces the barrier to them doing the same thing. So if I talk about my life, my personal stuff, they are more likely, not guaranteed, to do the same thing, because some people are very separated about their work life and their personal life, and that's totally a personal decision. It just really depends on one's individual level of comfort, and
Yeah,
it's
okay.
definitely something that varies from person to person. But I've found on average that if I open up in my personal life, the other person will typically, not always, do it too.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Most of the people on your team neurodivergent as well?
Yes, most of my team is neurodivergent, actually, I would say, more than half.
Do you find that makes it easier?
I think it creates a greater sense of trust and, I would say, camaraderie. I don't know if camaraderie is the right word, but I think it creates a greater sense of understanding and empathy. I think ultimately, because I understand their neurodiversity, I don't understand all of it, obviously, but I think because I'm neurodivergent too, they have a greater affinity for disclosing to me and having an open, candid conversation about their neurodiversity to me. They can come to me and say, hey, here's what's going on. Or if I ask them, they're going to be a lot more willing to talk about it with me. Otherwise, it would be a lot more challenging for them if they didn't have someone who they felt understood it or got it. But
Yeah.
because I'm neurodivergent myself, I get it. I've been there. I've been exactly where they've been, and I have no reason to want something that's not in their best interests. So when they come to me and say, this is what's going on, it's my responsibility to do something with it. But also, I know much more clearly what to do with it because I've done the same thing in the past, or I've had managers who have done something for me. They've gone to bat for me. They've advocated for me.
Yeah. Yeah, your team is very lucky to have someone like you.
Thank you.
Now, another productivity tactic that helps many people is taking breaks. So we're going to take a quick break.
Hi there, Focus and Chillers. Are you ready to supercharge your knowledge in the realms of creativity, tech, and psychology? Come check out my fortnightly newsletter. In each edition, you'll get quick wins and actionable takeaways that you can put into practice right away. If this sounds like you, I'd love to have you as a reader. Subscribe for your fortnightly dose of insights. The link is in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show.
All right, we're back again, and I want to now ask about your hobbies. You mentioned you're very active and you do hiking and running and all of those activities. Are they your main hobbies?
I would say I do them pretty frequently. My other big hobby, I think, at the moment is Dungeons and Dragons. I really think that's an interesting hobby for someone who's neurodivergent and someone who I've been for a lot of masking, a lot of experimentation. What are the personalities that I really see myself as being in? What does a mean Shea look like? What does a kind Shea look like? What are all these different things that I can try on in order to understand how I would act in a scenario if something happened to me? And as a result of that, I think it's helped me develop more socially too. And I'm really enjoying all of that as well.
I'm going to have to try it because it seems to be very popular amongst autistic people.
It's so much fun. I really enjoy it, and I can't recommend it enough. There's a little bit of a learning curve, not gonna lie, but I really do enjoy it.
How long does a game normally take?
I'm playing tonight with a bunch of my friends, and we have it scheduled for 3 hours at the moment. I would say 3 hours is a healthy minimum.
Yeah.
You can get away with 2, but you have to really have a dungeon master who's going to keep things locked in under control. But I think you want to budget for 3 hours, assuming that things will take longer than you plan on them doing.
Yeah. Okay. I will find a chunk of time in my schedule to have to try it out.
It's great. You got a good group of friends who you really want to have fun with, and people who post groups all the time are out there. So you'll find a group easily. They're everywhere.
Cool. All right. Different question. What does your morning routine look like, and how has it evolved over time?
I alluded to this a little bit before. My morning routine is typically I wake up at 7:30. Sometimes my cats wake me up. If I don't wake up at 7:30 for some reason, we have an automatic feeder for the cats for dry food. That goes off at 8 o'clock. So if for some reason I'm still in bed at 8 o'clock, that goes off. That gets me out of the bed pretty much no matter what.
Oh, because it's in the bedroom with you?
It's not, but like I hear it, and like the cats also hear it too. So if I don't hear it and the cat is on me, they will hear it and they'll sprint off to bed and they will go get their breakfast. It is the most important part of the day, of the morning for them. The other most important part of the day is if I feed them their wet food. That's a part of my routine as well. I feed them the wet food in the morning when I walk out of the door to go to the office. And then the other most important part of the day for the cats is at 6 p.m. when their dinner food comes out. And my morning routine is I wake up at 7:30 to 8 o'clock, brush my teeth, change, shower, feed the cats wet food, and I'm out the door between 8:15 and 8:30.
Is the office close by?
The office is like 15 minutes away on a good day. I haven't really run into traffic just yet. The only issue is just like when I got onto the highway, it's one of those complicated interchanges, so I had to be really careful getting off that exit. Otherwise, people's gonna hit me, and I've almost gotten hit already. It's not the most well designed, not the best designed exit, I would say. And I've gotten more aware of the fact that it's not good. I just have to be very careful, very aware. And since I've just like have a heightened awareness of that interchange, I haven't run into an issue with it yet.
That's good. And then in terms of you go to the office, arrive 9:30 or so, and do you typically leave at like 5:30, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, like I leave at like 5:15, and I'm at home by 6 o'clock. I try to
Nice.
be home by 5:30 or so. The commute's only 15 minutes or so. But
Mm,
like walking from here to my car is 5 minutes, and then going back home is another 15. So my commute is
mm,
like 20 minutes
mm.
one way.
It's an ideal duration. Probably helps with being able to switch off from work as well, because I work from home and I have to do something artificial to create a sense of finishing the day. Go for a
Oh
walk
yeah,
around the block.
I,
For
I
you
work
being able
from
to commute
home.
home.
I work from home 1 or 2 days a week, and I'll like leave my computer in my office and not touch it, and that'll be my separation. Or
Mm,
I'll like make sure that I use my work computer for work, obviously. My personal computer only for personal stuff. I have a completely different computer for coding, so like I don't touch my work computer for personal things. Like D&D will be on my personal laptop tonight.
nice. Where can people connect with you?
I am on LinkedIn. My name
Mhm,
is Shea Belsky.
mhm.
My name is in the episode title, so you can just like copy and paste that into the search engine of your choice. There is only one of me. If you find another one of me, let me know. I'll take care of it. Um, but there's only one of me if you look me up on the internet in your favorite search engine or social media platform.
Yeah, and we'll include the links in the show notes as well. Do you have any final words or asks for our audience?
I would say my final words and asks, if you know somebody who's neurodivergent in the US and they're looking for a job, software, data, or design, Mentra is the place to be for that. Even if you're not in any of those industries, you can still leverage Mentra as a platform to help you advocate as part of your over job applications. It's a great way to help you discover yourself a little bit more than you knew yourself before. So whether or not any of the things apply to you, there's no harm in signing up for Mentra, and I can't recommend it enough to everybody.
Fantastic. Right. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Of course, thanks so much for having me again. I'll see you all soon.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Focus and Chill podcast. To listen to other episodes, jump onto podcast.focusbear.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you know someone who'd be a good fit, email us at team@focusbear.io. Otherwise, stay focused, stay chilled, and peace out.